Welcome to another rousing adventure of the Burning Bench. I'm Willie, and today I'm going to solder a ring together, and also I'm going to show you how to pour metal, hot metal, into an ingot mold. If you don't do it properly, it could be a very explosive experience, I know. Again, I've done it. First time I poured hot metal into an ingot mold, I didn't warm the ingot mold sufficiently. It was in my first job, and I walked in one day and I said, "Do you need a goldsmith?" And he said, "Yeah, mine just quit." So he decided to give me a chance for a week, and I had probably set a half a dozen stones at this point. And I used to carry my lunch bucket with me. Well, in my lunch bucket wasn't lunch. It was the Jewelry Repairman's Manual. So anytime I ran into a problem, I kept my lunch bucket in the bathroom, and so I'd go to the bathroom and open my lunch bucket and look up what I was having issue with, and go out and do the job. Flying by the seat of my pants, so to speak. But I did not read about ingot molds, and I had I poured hot metal into an ingot mold, and needless to say, it wasn't a pretty experience. I ended up getting burnt relatively bad on my shoulder, and lost probably an ounce of gold. So we'll go through that so that won't happen to you. I made the mistake for you. Okay. Well, first part of this, I'm going to solder two rings together. Do a lot of that, and I prefer to solder top and bottom. Now, the reason for that is I can't tell you how many rings I've repaired where the ring separated on the top and broke off at the bottom where it was soldered. So to alleviate that, you solder top and bottom, you got a nice solid unit, and it's not going to break. So I have my rings. They are right here. I'm an odd duck. Okay, that's been established already. Here's my rings, and we're going to solder them together. First thing we need, we pull our tray out. I love my tray. And we get our solder pads. Now this is a smaller solder pad. This is my solder pad I use for doing platinum, but I like to put this pad on top of that when I'm soldering things together. Now, there's a lot of different ways to solder rings together. If you go to some of the books, they tell you to take binding wire and bind them all up and tie them all up, but that slows you down, and it doesn't seem to work well. So I have come up with a method for myself that, I guess early on I forget what episode I was telling you, if it works for you and you get the job done and it looks good, that was the right way to do it. So I'm going to show you Willie's way. So I'll lay my rings on my solder pad. And in this particular case, because if I try to just lay these on top, it's going to slide down. So I want my bottom ring to be level. So I have, it's an old beading tool. And now my ring is level. So I'll be able to set my ring on top here, and it won't slide down. So let's do that. You know what? I forgot something, and I probably do this over the years. I've done this thousands and thousands of times. I forgot my denatured alcohol and boric acid to prevent fire scale. We got fire I love fire. Okay. Okay, so I am going to, not we, unless you're following along at home, going to lay my engagement ring down there. Then wedding band. Now, this is what I like about putting this high-temp pad underneath. It's got little feet on it. Makes it real easy to move this around. And when I line these up, what I like to do is I like to look at them from the front, and then that way I can get a real good idea whether they're lined up. So I line up, I look at the inside here, make sure that's lined up at the bottom, and then I turn it. I look at that side, make sure the other side is at the same distance on the ring. So on this one, the diamond's end right here, and the diamond's end in the same place on the engagement band. So we want to make sure both sides are set up like that. And they're even. So I'm going to turn this back around. Cut us a little bit of solder. We're going to flux. Now I'm going to take, we have our torch already on. Pretty cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder the top first. Now this does a couple things. If the rings have been sized, it automatically heats everything enough to where they're annealed, and when you go to solder the backside, you don't have to be concerned about popping the joint if it is sized. So carefully lay my solder in there. Another thing, when you're soldering on the inside of the ring like that, for whatever reason, you need a little bit more heat on your torch. Okay. I didn't want to melt it. It was getting pretty cherry red. You got to look for that. You got to look for color change in your metal. If you see that your metal is getting red, that's kind of the sign that you got to back off a little bit and wait for it to cool down to where it's not red anymore. Got it soldered at the top, letting it cool a bit. Like to let it cool because that completes the annealing process. From here, we're going to take it and put it in the third hand and solder the bottom of the shank. Got the rings in the third hand. I've refocused the camera so you can see what I'm doing. That's always good, especially since this is an instructional video. What I personally like doing is, I used to take and solder my seam from the outside, but it was a lot more cleanup. And I discovered that if I put my solder on the inside of the shanks and solder them that way, a lot less cleanup, you save yourself a lot of time that way. So we're going to put some flux in, grab some solder here on our solder pick, and we're going to lay it right in there. And we try to heat both bands evenly. And you see me putting the torch in and drawing it out, putting it in and drawing it out. This is so I don't get it so hot that I melt that seam. We don't want to melt the seam where we've sized it, where I've sized it. Okay. Now there's a bit of a gap right here, and I'm going to try to pull it in a little bit. And I'll put my tweezers there, and then I'll give myself a little bit more heat. And heat our solder. Okay, pull that in there. I'm going to move my tweezers up a bit and reheat. Okay, got it completely soldered together now, and just a matter of letting it cool, and I'll trim it up. Coffee break. Ring's cooled. I'm ready to trim it up. Look at the back side of the ring, and I take the edge of my inside ring, my half round, and I run it between the two rings, so that way I have a real nice separating line between them. It gives it a lot of definition. Now I want to clean up the inside of the ring. Filing one way, then I turn the ring around, file from the other side, just like in our size ups and our size downs or any type of job we do. We want to file one direct from one side and then turn the ring around. That gives us a nice level file on the inside of our ring. So then make sure that the solder we did at the top is level, and we're done. All we're going to do right now is take our emery board, trim things up, level it out, all right, it's a done deal. All we have to do now is polish it, throw in the ultrasonic, steam it, wrap it up, and send it out. Next, I'm going to show you how to pour gold into an ingot mold. Got to get things set up. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're ready to pour some gold. Got my crucible. Crucible is what I melt my gold in. I put some scraps in here so it can melt down. I've got my carbon rod. Carbon rod I use to steer around the molten gold to take any contamination out. The all-important ingot mold. And that's a 3-piece mold. We got 2 pieces. So this is called an adjustable ingot mold, meaning I can adjust it to what size I need it. And then, of course, we have the clamp to clamp it tight for when I pour the gold in, it stays in the ingot mold and doesn't pour out the sides. Safety glasses, very bright flame. Say that 20 times. Good luck. And then I have my torch. I have put my rosebud tip on my torch. It creates a lot of heat for melting. So what I'm going to do is, one important item is WD-40. Now WD-40 doesn't boil. So I can spray my ingot mold with WD-40 and it lubricates it. So when I'm done pouring my stock, it'll come out of the ingot mold clean. Hopefully. So I'm going to pour a little bit of WD-40 in there. I'm not pouring much metal, so I'm not going to make a very big ingot. And then put my clamp on here. Clamp it down. I can get it closer to the middle. Clamp it down. And then I just like to kind of beat on it a little bit and make sure that it's down all the way. So from here on out, I'm gonna have to stand up. I can't pour gold sitting down. So, but the important thing is watching what I do and learning the procedure. So, enjoy looking at my belly. Got to put our glasses on. Very important, very important. There's that very important thing again. Hi, I look like Hollywood, don't I? One thing I forgot to mention is that I usually bump my pressure up to about 40 psi because this requires a lot more oxygen to get hot enough to melt our metal. All right, here we go. Now, that's a big flame. Okay, the first thing is I gotta draw all the moisture out of the ingot mold. Because if we have water or moisture in the metal, when that hot gold is poured in, it's gonna create a gas and your metal is gonna take off like a rocket ship to the moon. All right, that should be good. Now I'm going to heat our gold. You want the gold to look like this. You see how when I run my carbon rod through it, it goes right through and comes right back. Looks a little bit like mercury. Set my carbon rod down on my solder pad so I don't burn anything. So hopefully now I'm going to get this and it's going to come right down in the right place. We have the ingot ready to come out. I need to persuade it a bit though because I have a slit, just a little bit where the bottom plate and the ingot side plate, there's just a bit of a gap, and sometimes my gold will flow underneath that, and so I have to kind of persuade it to get it out. This is still quite hot. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but there's still steam coming off of it. Got the ingot. Set it up here. There's always a little bit of scrap left over. We want to make sure that we take and get all that scrap. Back together. Got my ingot, ready to roll some sizing stock, and I guess that does it for another exciting episode of The Burning Bench. Not sure what I'm going to do next. I think I'm going to surprise you. Till then, this is Willie. Thanks for tuning in.